Someone asks you what you want, and you pause. Not because you're thinking about it, because you genuinely don't know. Somewhere between all the times you made sure everyone else was okay, between all the meals you planned around other people's preferences, all the plans you adjusted, all the feelings you managed, all the needs you anticipated before they were even spoken, somewhere in all of that, you lost track of what you actually want. And the strange part is, nobody forced you. You did it because it felt right, because taking care of people feels meaningful, because being needed feels like being loved, because making sure everyone else is okay is something you are genuinely good at, and because somewhere in the quiet underneath all of it, the alternative, putting yourself first, feels like something between uncomfortable and wrong. So what is actually happening in the psychology of someone who always puts others first? And is it as selfless as it looks? Let's start with what the research says, because people who chronically prioritize others over themselves aren't simply more generous than average. What they often have is a highly developed threat response to the possibility of disappointing or burdening other people. Psychologists studying people-pleasing patterns consistently find elevated anxiety markers, specifically around social disapproval. The person who always puts others first isn't just being kind. Their nervous system is frequently managing a low-level threat. What happens if I don't? And that threat almost always has an origin. Research on attachment theory shows that chronic self-sacrifice most commonly develops in environments where the child's emotional needs were secondary to the needs of the adults around them, where love was expressed conditionally, through approval, through being good, through not causing trouble, where the child learned early and thoroughly that their needs created burden, that being easy to love meant being easy to manage, that the way to secure connection was to be the person who required the least. That child became an adult who is extraordinarily attuned to other people's needs, who can read a room before they've crossed the threshold, who anticipates what's needed before it's asked, who smooths over conflict before it escalates, who gives and gives and gives, and who, somewhere in the quiet, has no idea what they actually need, because needing was never quite safe enough to practice. But here's where it gets genuinely interesting, because the pattern isn't only about fear. For many people who put others first, there is a genuine and deep satisfaction in caregiving. Real neurological reward. Research on prosocial behavior consistently shows that helping others activates the brain's reward centers, including the release of oxytocin and dopamine. The helper isn't suffering through their generosity. They are, in many moments, genuinely nourished by it. The problem arises not from the caring itself, but from the fact that the caring has no off switch, when generosity is driven partly by anxiety, when underneath the genuine love there is also the fear of what happens if I stop. It cannot be freely given, because freely given generosity requires that the giver could, if they chose, not give, and for the chronic self-sacrificer, that choice doesn't quite feel available. And here's what nobody talks about. The person who always puts others first is often running an invisible calculation every single day. Am I being too much? Am I asking for too much? Is this need too big to bring to someone else? Is it worth disrupting the dynamic? Would it be easier to just handle this myself? And the answer, almost always, is to absorb the need quietly and carry it alone, because it feels like the least disruptive option, because it feels like the loving option, because it keeps the peace. But here's the cost, and it is a real one. Research consistently shows that chronic self-sacrifice without reciprocity is one of the strongest predictors of burnout, resentment, and a specific kind of quiet depression, the kind that doesn't come from sadness exactly, but from a life that has been lived for other people so completely that the person inside it has become to themselves a stranger. They know what everyone else needs. They have no idea what they need, and that gap between how well they know others and how poorly they know themselves is one of the loneliest places a person can live. Let's be honest about something. If you are someone who always puts others first, and you are reading this with that particular recognition that sits somewhere between relief and grief, the care you give is real, the love underneath it is real, and the exhaustion is real too. All of it is real, and here is what needs to be said about that exhaustion directly. It is not ingratitude. It is not weakness. It is what happens when a person pours from a cup they never refill, not because they don't want to refill it, but because they were never taught that the cup was theirs to fill. Here's what's fascinating about this pattern when it begins to change. The first time someone who always puts others first actually expresses a need, actually says what they want, actually asks for something, actually allows someone else to take care of them, it rarely feels like liberation. It feels like danger. The nervous system flags it. The old voice says, "You're being selfish, you're being a burden, you're too much." And the person has to learn through repeated experience that those alarms are old and that expressing a need doesn't actually destroy the relationships they're afraid of losing. That the people who genuinely love them have been waiting to know what they need. That taking up space doesn't mean taking space from others. That lesson takes time. It takes practice. It takes the specific courage of someone who was rewarded their whole life for disappearing, learning to be present, learning to be seen, learning to say, "This is what I need," and mean it. You were not born to carry everyone else. You were born to be in relationship with people, to give and to receive, to care and to be cared for, to need and to be needed. The balance got disrupted somewhere, but disruptions can be corrected. Your needs matter, not after everyone else's, not when you've made sure everyone is okay. Now. They matter now. Subscribe to Brain Decoded for more psychology that finally says what needed to be said. And if someone in your life always puts others first, and you've never quite known how to reach them, try asking them what they need, and then actually wait for the answer. It might take a while. They're not used to being asked.